At our pregnancy announcement, my sister smashed her wine glass and screamed, "You know how long I've been trying for a baby. I deserve to be the first." Then she demanded I abort within 1 week or she'd call police. My name is Emma Mitchell, and at 29, I never expected my own sister to weaponize pregnancy against me. As a family law attorney at Henderson and Associates, earning $185,000 annually, I'd spent years helping clients navigate complex family disputes. But nothing prepared me for the moment my 19-year-old sister Jacqueline turned our family celebration into a legal nightmare. The wine glass shattered against my mother's marble countertop with a sound that still echoes in my memory. Red wine spread across the white surface like blood, while 23 relatives sat frozen in my parents' living room. Kyle, my husband of 4 years, instinctively moved between Jacqueline and me as she advanced with fury blazing in her eyes. "How dare you steal my thunder?" she shrieked, pointing an accusatory finger at my barely visible bump. "I've been trying for 8 months. Everyone knows I want to be a mother first." The absurdity hit me immediately. 8 months wasn't even medically concerning for conception, and Jacqueline had only been with her boyfriend Marcus for 10 months total. But as I watched her theatrical breakdown unfold, my professional training kicked in. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This was a pattern of manipulation I'd seen countless times in family court. My mother attempted damage control. "Sweetheart, 19 is very young for motherhood. Perhaps you should focus on—" "Don't you dare side with her." Jacqueline whirled around, tears streaming down her face with perfect timing. "She planned this to upstage me. She knows I've been taking prenatal vitamins and tracking my ovulation." Uncle Jeffrey, a corporate attorney who'd mentored me through law school, cleared his throat diplomatically. "Jacqueline, pregnancies aren't competitions. There's no first-place prize." "There is in this family," she shot back. "Grandma's engagement ring goes to the first granddaughter who gives her great-grandchildren. The college fund Mom and Dad set up gets distributed based on who needs it most for their kids. Emma's stealing my inheritance." Now the real motivation emerged. My grandmother's 3-carat diamond ring, appraised at $47,000, traditionally passed to the first family member to produce the next generation. The college fund Jacqueline mentioned contained approximately $180,000, established by my parents for future grandchildren's education. Kyle squeezed my hand as I processed the financial implications. Jacqueline wasn't just having an emotional breakdown. She was calculating losses. As a family attorney, I recognized the signs of someone who viewed relationships as transactional arrangements. "I'm not stealing anything," I said calmly, my courtroom voice emerging. "These aren't competitions, Jacqueline. Family inheritance traditions aren't legally binding contracts with monetary damages." Her response was swift and vicious. "You think you're so smart with your law degree? Fine. You have 1 week to terminate that pregnancy, or I'm filing a harassment complaint with the police. I'll tell them you've been emotionally abusing me, interfering with my reproductive choices, and causing me psychological distress." The room went dead silent. Even my parents, who'd enabled Jacqueline's dramatics for years, looked shocked by the legal threat. But I wasn't fazed. After 6 years practicing family law, I'd heard far more outrageous accusations. "Jacqueline," I said slowly, "filing a false police report is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. Harassment requires a pattern of behavior actually designed to annoy, alarm, or terrorize someone. A pregnancy announcement doesn't meet legal criteria for harassment." Her face reddened further. "We'll see about that. Marcus knows people in the district attorney's office. They'll take this seriously when I explain how you're destroying my mental health." Kyle stepped forward, his voice deadly calm. "Are you threatening to weaponize the legal system against your pregnant sister because you're jealous?" "I'm protecting my rights." Jacqueline grabbed her designer purse, an $800 Coach bag my parents had bought for her birthday, and headed for the door. 1 week, Emma. Get rid of it or face the consequences." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. The silence that followed was suffocating. My father rubbed his temples. "She's just emotional. First-time relationship stress. You know how young people are." But I was already mentally reviewing harassment statutes and documentation requirements. If Jacqueline wanted to play legal games, she'd chosen the wrong opponent. The next morning proved I'd underestimated her determination. Kyle opened our door to find Jacqueline standing on our porch at 7 a.m., holding a manila folder thick with printed papers. Behind her stood Marcus, looking uncomfortable but clearly recruited as backup. "I made appointments," she announced loudly enough for our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to hear from her garden. 3 different clinics. Planned Parenthood downtown has an opening Thursday at 2 p.m. The Women's Health Center on Maple Street can see you Friday morning. And Dr. Brennan's private practice has a Saturday slot. She thrust the papers at Kyle, who was still in his boxers and t-shirt. "All the paperwork's filled out. Emma just needs to sign and show up." Our neighborhood's family-friendly facade crumbled as other residents emerged to see what the commotion was about. The Hendersons from across the street pretended to check their mailbox while obviously eavesdropping. Young Tommy Gonzalez stopped riding his bike to stare at the scene unfolding on our front lawn. Kyle's jaw tightened dangerously. "You need to leave. Now." "Not until she agrees to do the right thing." Jacqueline planted her feet defiantly. "This is about family fairness. I shouldn't have to suffer because Emma couldn't wait her turn." That's when I appeared in the doorway, fully dressed and carrying my briefcase. Unlike Kyle, I'd been expecting this escalation. "Jacqueline," I said in my most professional tone, "you're now creating a public disturbance on private property while attempting to coerce medical decisions through emotional blackmail. This constitutes criminal harassment under State Code 18.9.111. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "For the record, it's Tuesday, October 15th. Jacqueline Mitchell is on my property demanding I terminate a pregnancy and has printed appointment materials for medical procedures without my consent." Her confidence faltered slightly. "I'm not harassing anyone. I'm trying to help my family. By publicly discussing my private medical information without permission, creating a scene designed to embarrass me in front of neighbors, and making demands about my reproductive choices." I kept the camera rolling. "Marcus, are you witnessing her statements about coercing pregnancy termination?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. She said you'd understand if we explained." "Did she tell you she threatened to file false police reports if I don't comply with her demands?" "What?" Marcus turned to Jacqueline, confusion replacing his earlier resolve. "You said this was about family planning, not legal stuff." Jacqueline's perfectly orchestrated scene was crumbling. "Emma's being dramatic. I never said anything about false reports." I scrolled through my phone and played yesterday's recording. Her voice rang out clearly. "I'm filing a harassment complaint with the police. I'll tell them you've been emotionally abusing me." Marcus stepped backward. "Jack, you didn't tell me you were threatening to call cops. That's really messed up. Whose side are you on?" Jacqueline whirled on him, her mask slipping completely. "Nobody's. This is crazy." Marcus shook his head and walked toward his car. "I'm not getting involved in some family legal drama. This isn't what you told me we were doing." As Marcus drove away, Jacqueline's carefully constructed support system collapsed. She stood alone on my porch, holding abortion clinic brochures, having just lost her boyfriend's backing in front of multiple witnesses. "You manipulative bitch," she hissed, abandoning all pretense of victimhood. "You turned Marcus against me." "I documented your statements," I corrected. "Marcus made his own decision about participating in harassment." Kyle took the papers from her hands and methodically tore them into pieces, letting the fragments scatter across our lawn. "Don't come back here, Jacqueline. Any further contact goes through Emma's legal office." She left screaming threats about family loyalty and how we'd regret treating her this way. But I wasn't concerned about her tantrum. I was focused on the strategic advantage I'd just gained. Within 2 hours, I'd uploaded the recordings to a secure cloud server, emailed copies to my professional account, and sent Kyle digital backups. If Jacqueline wanted to escalate this into a legal battle, I'd have comprehensive evidence of her actual behavior versus any false claims she might file. By Wednesday afternoon, she'd moved to phase 2 of her campaign. My phone started ringing with calls from family members who'd received frantic messages about my cruel treatment of a struggling young woman trying to start her family. Aunt Patricia called first. "Emma, honey, Jacqueline is beside herself. She says you threatened her with legal action just for asking about your timing. Did she mention she demanded I terminate my pregnancy and threatened false police reports when I refused?" The line went quiet. She said what now? I played the relevant recording segments. Patricia's shock was audible as Jacqueline's actual words contradicted her victim narrative. Cousin Michelle called next with a similar story, followed by my parents' friends from church who'd been told I was bullying my pregnant sister. Each conversation played out the same way, initial concern for Jacqueline shifting to horror when they heard the actual recordings. By Thursday morning, I'd fielded 17 calls and emails. Each person who contacted me received the same professional treatment: polite clarification of facts, audio evidence, and gentle education about harassment laws. My legal background proved invaluable in calmly dismantling Jacqueline's false narrative while maintaining family relationships. But Jacqueline wasn't finished. Friday brought her masterstroke, a family intervention. My mother called with barely contained panic. "Emma, we need you and Kyle here Sunday at 2 p.m. The whole family's coming. Jacqueline she's not well. She's threatening to hurt herself if this pregnancy situation doesn't get resolved." The suicide threat was a classic manipulation tactic I'd seen repeatedly in custody cases. Desperate parties often escalated to self-harm claims when other strategies failed. But now Jacqueline had crossed into potentially criminal territory. "Mom, are you telling me she's making suicidal statements to manipulate my reproductive choices?" "She's just emotional. She needs family support. She needs psychiatric evaluation. Threats of self-harm require professional intervention, not family meetings." But I agreed to attend, knowing this gathering would likely provide the final evidence needed to establish a clear pattern of harassment and emotional manipulation. Sunday's intervention exceeded even my professional expectations for dysfunction. 23 relatives crowded into my parents' living room while Jacqueline positioned herself at the fireplace like a prosecutor addressing a jury. She'd prepared a PowerPoint presentation. The Mitchell Family Crisis: Why Emma's Selfishness is Destroying Our Legacy appeared on the television screen as Jacqueline clicked through slides detailing her 8 months of fertility struggles, her deep emotional investment in becoming the family's first new mother, and her legitimate concerns about inheritance fairness. Slide 7 showed a timeline with my pregnancy announcement marked in red as the betrayal, followed by detailed financial projections of how my child would steal resources meant for Jacqueline's future family. The presentation was simultaneously absurd and legally fascinating. Jacqueline had essentially created documentary evidence of her calculated manipulation, complete with financial motives that undermined any claims of spontaneous emotional distress. Uncle Jeffrey, maintaining his lawyer's poker face, asked the obvious questions. "Jacqueline, what specific legal claim do you have to inheritance property or reproduction timing within this family?" "It's not about legal claims," she snapped, momentarily forgetting her victim persona. "It's about fairness, about respecting family hierarchy." "What hierarchy?" Kyle interjected. "Age-based reproduction rights? Birth order, pregnancy permissions?" Jacqueline's prepared speech crumbled under basic logical scrutiny. "You don't understand the psychological trauma I've endured. Watching Emma get pregnant first has triggered severe depression and anxiety." I stood up, my courtroom presence filling the room. "Jacqueline, You've just admitted your distress stems from jealousy over timing, rather than any harmful action I've taken. You've documented premeditation in demanding I terminate my pregnancy for your benefit, and you've made threats of self-harm to manipulate family members into pressuring me to undergo a medical procedure against my will. The room went silent as the legal implications crystallized. Furthermore, I continued, you violated patient privacy laws by discussing my medical information publicly, created harassment through repeated unwanted contact, and attempted to coerce reproductive choices through emotional blackmail. Jacqueline's facade finally shattered completely. Fine, you want to play lawyer? I'll show you what happens when you mess with me. She pulled out her phone and actually started dialing. I'm calling the police right now to report harassment. Uncle Jeffrey moved faster than I'd ever seen him. Jacqueline Michelle Mitchell, as a licensed attorney, I'm advising you that filing a false police report is a criminal offense. You've just provided 23 witnesses to your actual behavior, which contradicts any harassment claim you might make. Her finger hovered over the call button as the reality hit her. She wasn't the victim in this room. She was the aggressor, and everyone now knew it. My father finally found his voice. Jacqueline, this has gone too far. You need professional help, not police involvement. I need my family to support me, she screamed, tears of rage rather than sadness flowing freely. I need Emma to stop being selfish and think about someone else for once. By terminating my pregnancy? I asked quietly. Yes. The word exploded from her with such venom that several relatives visibly recoiled. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Jacqueline seemed to realize she'd finally revealed her true position, that her desires superseded my bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. Great Aunt Emma, the family matriarch, spoke first. Jacqueline, dear, I've never heard anything so selfish in my 87 years. One by one, each family member voiced their shock and disapproval. The intervention Jacqueline had orchestrated to pressure me instead became her own judgment day. When she realized the room had turned against her, she tried one final manipulation. If I don't get pregnant first, I'll never speak to any of you again. Uncle Jeffrey looked around the room, then back at Jacqueline. See you, Felicia. The nickname from the old movie broke the tension as nervous laughter rippled through the gathering. But Jacqueline wasn't laughing. She grabbed her purse and presentation materials, storming toward the door with her final threat. You'll all regret this when I'm gone forever. The door slammed, and for the first time in hours, the house felt peaceful. But I knew Jacqueline wasn't finished. Narcissistic personalities don't accept defeat easily, especially when their manipulation fails so publicly. I spent that evening updating my evidence files and preparing for whatever escalation would come next. I didn't have to wait long. 6 months later, at 33 weeks pregnant, Kyle and I were hosting our baby shower when the front door burst open without warning. Jacqueline stood in the entrance, one hand dramatically placed on a massive belly, wearing a maternity shirt emblazoned with first grandchild loading. The room full of co-workers, friends, and family members fell silent as she made her grand entrance. Surprise, she announced, spinning to display her pregnant profile. I'm due in 10 weeks. I got pregnant right after that horrible family meeting where you all betrayed me. Her timing was calculated for maximum impact, but her math was wrong. If she'd conceived immediately after the intervention 6 months ago, she'd be barely 24 weeks along. Her belly suggested full-term pregnancy, which meant she'd been pregnant during her entire harassment campaign. When's your due date? I asked innocently, knowing the answer would reveal her deception. December 15th, she said proudly, just 10 weeks away. Interesting, Kyle interjected. That means you conceived around March, which was 2 months before Emma's pregnancy announcement. The logic hit the room like a physical blow. Jacqueline had been pregnant before my announcement, had known about her pregnancy during her entire campaign against me, and had still demanded I terminate my pregnancy so she could maintain her fiction of being first. My friend Jessica, an OB/GYN attending the shower, couldn't hide her professional shock. "You were already pregnant when you demanded your sister terminate her pregnancy?" Jacqueline's confident smile flickered. "The dates don't matter. What matters is birth order." "Actually, they do matter," I said, my legal mind processing the implications. "You threatened legal action and demanded medical procedures from me while already carrying your own child. That's not competition. That's calculated deception." But Jacqueline had prepared for this moment. She approached me with the predatory smile I remembered from childhood when she'd gotten me in trouble. "8 weeks," she whispered, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. "I'm due 8 weeks before you, but don't worry, I'll make sure mine comes first no matter what." The threat was clear and chilling. She released my arm and swept out of the party, leaving behind a shocked crowd and the terrible implication that she was willing to risk premature birth to maintain her narrative of being first. That Tuesday, my mother called sobbing hysterically. Through her broken words, I pieced together the horrifying truth. Jacqueline's roommate had found her unconscious in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor. She'd purchased black market labor induction drugs from a website in Romania, attempting to trigger premature delivery at 31 weeks. When the drugs weren't working fast enough, she'd found someone on Craigslist, a young woman whose mother had once worked as a midwife in the Philippines. The unlicensed surgeon had initially refused to perform the operation, explaining that 31 weeks was far too early for safe delivery. But Jacqueline had threatened to perform the surgery herself with kitchen knives if the woman didn't help. They'd used box cutters sterilized with vodka. The neighbor who called 911 described blood seeping under Jacqueline's apartment door. The paramedics found her barely conscious, the baby delivered but purple and struggling to breathe. Both had nearly died in the ambulance. The baby went straight to the NICU on a ventilator. Jacqueline required an emergency hysterectomy. She'd never have another child. When she regained consciousness, her first action was to call me from her hospital bed. "You did this," she whispered through her oxygen mask. "My baby is dying because you couldn't wait your turn." Even facing the consequences of her own desperate actions, she couldn't acknowledge responsibility. The sister who demanded I terminate my pregnancy had nearly killed herself and her own child to maintain her delusion of being first. The family split immediately down the middle. Half recognized Jacqueline's actions as the result of severe mental illness requiring professional intervention. But the other half, including some aunts, cousins, and family friends, actually believed I bore responsibility for triggering her behavior by refusing to accommodate her demands. Aunt Patricia called to suggest I should have delayed announcing my pregnancy to spare Jacqueline's feelings. Cousin David actually said I should have taken one for the team and terminated when she asked. The victim blaming was as shocking as Jacqueline's original behavior, but something else was happening that complicated everything. The baby, fighting for life in the NICU, became the family's focal point. Suddenly, my healthy pregnancy seemed secondary to the crisis one floor below. Every conversation about my approaching due date got redirected to updates about tubes, ventilators, and survival odds. I didn't mind the reduced attention. My baby was Kyle's and mine, not a family performance. But it stung when relatives dismissed my pregnancy milestones while obsessing over Jacqueline's premature son. 3 days before my due date, I was admitted for routine monitoring. Jacqueline's baby remained critical, though slowly improving. The doctors said the next 48 hours would determine his long-term prognosis. That's when I noticed Jacqueline herself, supposedly bedridden and recovering from major surgery, standing in the hospital corridor between the NICU and maternity ward. She wasn't looking at room numbers or reading hospital signs. She was staring directly at my belly with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger or jealousy, but something far more dangerous: cold calculation. The night nurse mentioned that Jacqueline had been asking unusual questions about newborn security protocols, delivery room procedures, and whether babies were ever left unattended. She'd timed nursing shift changes and mapped ward layouts with the methodical precision of someone planning something. Kyle called hospital security immediately. Within an hour, Francis Bergman, the security supervisor, arrived at our room with a thick folder of safety protocols. He walked us through electronic badge systems that tracked everyone's location, ankle monitors that would trigger lockdowns if babies were moved past authorized areas, and staffing procedures ensuring newborns were never alone. I provided Francis with Jacqueline's clearest photo, which he distributed to every security guard with instructions to watch for her. The dedicated maternity ward officer received our direct contact number with promises of hourly check-ins once labor began. At 5 a.m., Olympia Hicks from Social Services arrived with forms documenting Jacqueline's threats for potential CPS involvement. She established that every intimidation Jacqueline had made against my unborn child would create an official record triggering automatic review after birth. As I signed form after form, my phone buzzed constantly with family members debating our security requests. Half thought we were overreacting to a new mother's stress, while others shared previously unreported stories of Jacqueline's unstable behavior over the years. Uncle Jeffrey texted contact information for Detective Cyrus Powell, who specialized in these cases and could fast-track police reports if needed. Kyle immediately responded with, "Yes, please," before I could hesitate about escalating family conflict into criminal territory. Detective Powell arrived while my early contractions were starting. He collected dates, times, and specific quotes, while Kyle held my hand, and I struggled to remember every threat through increasing pain. The suicide manipulation, the false police report threats, and now the hospital security concerns would strengthen any criminal case if charges became necessary. The morning shift nurse outlined delivery room security, showing us matching ID bands and emphasizing that babies were never left alone, even briefly. Kyle positioned himself by our door like a security guard, tensing at every footstep in the hallway. When Jefferson, Kyle's cousin, arrived trying to FaceTime the delivery to share the joy with the whole family, including poor Jacqueline, Kyle's response was swift and decisive. "Leave immediately, or security will remove you." Jefferson protested about everyone's right to participate in family moments, but Kyle simply pointed down the hall and said, "Go." Between contractions that made me grip the bed rails, Olympia explained we qualified for an emergency restraining order immediately after birth, legally preventing Jacqueline from approaching within 500 feet of us. Kyle agreed without hesitation while I breathed through mounting pain. When a nurse accidentally triggered the infant security alarm during routine checks, the incredible shrieking sound that followed actually reassured me. The entire floor would lock down instantly if that alarm activated for real, with security flooding the unit within seconds. My mother texted that Jacqueline was asking NICU nurses about break schedules, shift changes, and whether babies were ever alone during transitions between units. Kyle showed the message to Detective Powell, who immediately started writing in his black notebook. The contractions accelerated, and they wheeled me to the delivery room with Kyle jogging alongside, still clutching Powell's notebook, and Francis checking every doorway ahead of us. She arrived. Screaming, healthy, and perfect. They placed her on my chest while Kyle cried, and nurses immediately secured the matching bands on her ankle and my wrist. For those precious minutes, nothing existed except her tiny face and Kyle's tears. Within an hour, they moved us to a private room at the corridor's end, away from elevators and foot traffic. Francis ensured no nameplate marked our door and verified the computer system listed us as restricted patients. Kyle and the head nurse established a code word system. If we said pineapple, they would immediately move the baby to the locked nursery without questions. She wrote pineapple in red marker on every shift report. My phone exploded with family messages demanding photos and asking why we hadn't announced anything. Kyle typed one response to the group chat about taking private bonding time, which triggered accusations of selfishness and punishing the family for Jacqueline's mistakes. Kyle turned off my phone and locked it away. We don't need that drama right now. Over the following hours, security intercepted multiple attempts by someone using stolen visitor passes to access our floor. Each time they caught the person at elevators when basic questions about their visit couldn't be answered correctly. Detective Powell returned as I was learning to breastfeed, collecting an official statement about Jacqueline's threats. He mentioned that the woman who'd performed the illegal surgery had confessed everything, definitely facing charges for practicing medicine without a license and child endangerment. Dr. Brennan updated us on Jacqueline's baby's condition, stable on the ventilator but still critical, with the next 24 hours determining potential brain damage from oxygen deprivation during the botched surgery. While Kyle's mother held our healthy daughter, I felt the complex mix of relief and guilt that would define this entire experience. My baby was safe while my nephew fought for life one floor below, and both situations stemmed from Jacqueline's inability to accept that pregnancies weren't competitions. That afternoon, Kyle discovered someone had been calling the nurses' station 7 times, impersonating his mother to obtain our room number. His actual mother sat beside me, holding our daughter the entire time, looking as concerned as we were about the identity theft attempts. Francis implemented new protocols requiring photo ID verification and daily changing visitor wristbands. He moved us to an even more secure room with single-entry access and constant camera coverage. My mother arrived the following morning, suggesting a 5-minute visit from Jacqueline might snap her back to reality and help heal family divisions. When I firmly refused, she cried about my cruelty and family destruction, but she didn't pursue the matter when Kyle escorted her out. Detective Powell called with criminal case updates. Jacqueline's illegal surgery was prosecuted separately, but her threats against me would strengthen charges once she was mentally competent to stand trial. The evidence was overwhelming, and conviction seemed certain. Within a week, Olympia arranged trauma counseling and confirmed that Jacqueline's baby would be placed with his paternal grandparents in Oregon rather than requiring kinship care from us. The relief was overwhelming. Caring for 2 newborns while managing ongoing security threats would have been impossible. 2 weeks later, the restraining order hearing granted us a full year of legal protection. Jacqueline's contact attempts would trigger immediate arrest upon her release from psychiatric hold. The final resolution came months later. The unlicensed surgeon received 5 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 3. Jacqueline faced charges for reckless endangerment and conspiracy once she completed psychiatric treatment, potentially years away. My parents eventually entered family therapy to understand their role in enabling Jacqueline's manipulation. The extended family established clear boundaries about information sharing and surprise visits. Most importantly, we built a secure foundation for our daughter's future. The college fund, originally meant for first grandchildren, was restructured to benefit all family children equally. My grandmother's ring went to my daughter's safe deposit box, removing it from future manipulation attempts. 6 months later, sitting in our daughter's nursery during a peaceful 2 a.m. feeding, I reflected on the journey from Jacqueline's wine glass explosion to this moment of quiet security. The family drama would never fully resolve, but we'd protected our child from its chaos. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No threatening texts, no manipulation attempts, no emergency interventions, just the soft sound of my daughter breathing and the knowledge that sometimes the best victory is simply refusing to let others' dysfunction destroy your own peace. The attorney who'd spent years helping other families navigate crisis had successfully protected her own family from the ultimate manipulation. Someone who believed their desires superseded others' fundamental rights. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is simply living well despite others' attempts to destroy your happiness.